breathing, our entitlement of existence into now. Hello everyone, today's episode is all about my observations on entities. And I've written an entity's entitlement to subjective experience of an objective existence. And so even though it is easy, I noticed, since I was young, breaking things was easy, destroying things was easy, hating things was easy, not caring was easy, but the other side of the coin. And so it is very easy for me to just accept a limit of reality. There are so many limits. There are as many limits as you have the energy to continue in this world. There has been times where I've been energetic and I felt unstoppable, and there's been times where I've been tired, but still the mind has felt unstoppable. I remember I was having a conversation with my father. He's a spiritual person, and I asked him, if the soul is beyond the body, then the soul cannot get tired. So I was asking him pretty much, can the soul get tired? And this has been my realization, when it has come to doing an outer activity, for example, I don't know, climbing a tree, athletics of some kind. But when it comes to the inner realms, the energy you need to live as an inner life is so little. So what I'm telling the viewers is really this, that if your body was moving way slower than your mind right now, your imagination would appear, actually. And really what we think is imagination, some people say they have creativity, some people say they don't. I think I figured it out. It has nothing to do with it has some, you're being sculpted by the world and your own decisions. But when it comes to creativity is like surfing. You have an experience of your foot on the board, which is your biological existence, and then you have an experience of riding these waves, which becomes your inner realms. And this is something they don't teach, but really we're a rhythmic entity, and so when it comes to communication and expression, the human being has an incredible ability to animate as a rhythm. Do you understand? We might not have an ability to shape shift into different realities. Do you know what I mean? Anyways, what I'm trying to say is, when I'm tired, I live in my mind. And when I live in my mind, it's not a creature of a body, it's an attention to a world. And this is what imagination is. This is what your mind is. It's tuning into a rhythm, and when your inner realms move faster, this is how it goes. So I can literally, I'm interviewing people. I created a podcast called the Inner Realms Podcast. I'm trying to interview to see how other people are experiencing their imagination, but so far I have a sense of what happens to the human imagination. So what happens is that your first experience of imagination is your whole moment. When you're a young child, you don't have a sense of a name, you don't have a sense of an identity, you're just an existential expression in the moment. You're just really an objective existential being. But at some point, this moment, that means your imagination is like a singular whole moment. The child has no sense of self, not even the concept of imagination. But at some point, the child individualizes to itself. What that means is its existential experience. That means when a child is born, we can poetically say its mind and its body are the same size. Imagine the body was like a green sphere, and imagine the mind was a blue sphere. Okay, and when a child is born, these spheres are the same size. Okay. Now, if the child, based on what it chooses, you're a being here, meaning that you are a life force as a conscious entity, like literally you have been sent to this world to do research on what everything is. Do you understand? It's hilarious. It's like we've been sent to this world to research the researcher that is not in this world, you know. I said this poetic, hilarious story. This story I fathomed in my talks, and I said that there was this guy, this holy man, and he did all the right moves. Literally, people were like, "Yo, this spiritual guy is on another level, on another dimension. He has like 10,000, the strength of 10,000 Nirvikalpa Samadhis, guiding him. It's as if he is. It's like it's an automatic victory." And so imagine this guy. He doesn't struggle in the level of the world, the lower levels of the world, and whether it's Mount Meru or Mount Olympus, climbs this mountain to get to the summit where the gods are, and eventually he manages to get to the mountain against all odds and puts his head into above the clouds of Mount Olympus, and he suddenly sees all the gods are having a cocktail party, right? And then suddenly he says, "Yo guys, I made it to paradise, I made it," and then in that moment everybody starts laughing as if they're seeing their cousin or something, and they're like, "Buddy, you went down there. You weren't pushed down there. You weren't forced down there. You were created, but it was out of your own action." For example, if there was an argument to be made from someone who was, for example, Buddhist and yogic, who had a sense of karma, and somebody who was monotheistic and theological, it's as if God did not send man to earth. Man sent himself to earth. Not that man is God. That man made a decision that activated that reality. So what I'm saying is, if a Buddhist looks at, for example, let's say a Buddhist monk and a monotheistic priest are talking, Christian priest, and so in some sense it's as if the yogi is saying enlightenment is in some sense you've ended up as this. First of all, think of it as if you're a multidimensional being. And as a multidimensional being, you're experiencing a multidimensional effect of yourself. You're experiencing an effect. So it's as if right now, me giving these Mr. Within talks, why? Because in 2014, I started a YouTube channel. Why am I on this earth? Because most likely at some point, the universal self decided to animate. But in reality, what can I say? This world is so fascinating that we all think we consider like ourselves to be minds. We look at someone and we're like, "Yo, that person's out of their mind." Or we look at someone who's like achieved something, we're like, "That person has found their mind or has found the visions of their mind," or whatever. And by the way, as a note, guys, I'm saying this at the beginning of every episode. Pretty much, either listen to the talk completely as if I'm on a stage and you're an audience member in an auditorium. Either stay for the whole talk as if you're inside the building, sitting in the crowd, or leave the talk and don't return. So pretty much think as if I was speaking on stage and there was an audience, right? And if the audience was moving, and imagine some poor souls trying to give a TED talk, some poor souls trying to give a TED talk, it's like, "Yo man, the crowd's not sitting. They're all moving, jumping from reality to reality." It's so fascinating, The human being is getting bored, and in getting bored is seeking new realities. In seeking new realities is pushing its mind to a speed that is faster than its body, therefore rendering itself in a period of 1,000 years as a non-physical entity. So what does this mean? That means civilization, the type of humanism. Some people can say Mr. Within said it, right? But I don't know why, but I'm seeing this. And of course, there's going to be backup strategies, There was a time where in my inner realms, poetically, I felt the rhythms of the logos of this universal sector. I don't know how to say it, but I am a person who, I am living such a strange, this lifetime is very humorous in the sense that I get to see the future, but I am not there. My mind can see instances of what can happen in the future. Sometimes even when I say in the future, not as like, yo, everybody, here's my bank account, send the money and I'll tell you your future. Not like that, not that shit. I am trying to be a fortune teller of the species, not of an individual ego to throw a bone for a dogma. And why is there an emphasis on being an entity? Because, I was watching, I don't know, sometimes I try to ground myself by watching videos of ignorance online. Like, they just come up. And I was seeing this video where I noticed that the species has a new sort of problem as a problem presented in the fabric of the cultural and social dimensions. So what this means is that in this episode, I'm pretty much saying, hey, we're considering ourselves as beings, but in what manner are we considering ourselves as being? Is the subjective experience of reality true, or is the objective existence of reality true? Right? If you're a materialist, the objective existence of reality is true. If you're an immaterialist, a solipsist, the subjective experience is true. But if you are a mystic, if you are a lover of the unknown, you will realize that the world is designed to lie. I remember I was, speaking to a friend of mine, and he said something very interesting. He said a sentence that it had such an intense impression on my mind. He said, the truth is structured in lies. And you know what it is? It's another way of saying those who do not know the higher dimensions, they are left being afraid of in some sense where they are going, so they try to control the lesser dimensions. There was a time where I was like, yo, there's evil beings in the world. But why? What is causing someone to be evil? What is causing someone to destroy? What is causing someone to, in some sense, dishonor their own species, where for 4.5 billion years, our ancestors, all of our ancestors, didn't know who each other were, but they lived in this world. They went forth. That's the power of the human mind. It is the glory of an advanced universal sector. We are the victory of the cosmos. Because what other victory can it have? We are the only one who notices the battlefield. We are poetically God's eyes in the world. That's what the soul is. And even more poetically, we are the heart of the living world. What that means is that every creature that breathes, do you understand, like the plant life on this planet? Do you understand, I don't understand the moment scientists understood that trees in some sense are the reason the atmosphere is creating human inhabitation, creating the planet, habitable for human beings. There was this really interesting mystical story, and it was this parable, it was this idea of this fish in an ocean, this school of fish, this bunch of smart fish in a school of fish, and these bunch of fish, these friends of, I don't know, these fish friends. Sometimes in life you have fishy friends and then you have fish friends, yeah. So anyways, these group of fish, they decide to discover what is God, what is truth, why are they all here? Do you understand? And these group of fish, they're educated more than the other fish. The other fish don't care. The other fish are just like, yo, I want something to eat. Don't disturb my eating. You know, this lifetime, I have incarnated on this planet to just eat and then die, right? That's what we think we're here as objective entities, right? Just to survive. Just repeat, and at some point it lights off. You see, I am the intensity I feel is simply because
when I first started playing Survivor,
Jesus Christ. Oh my God. See, even this guy's playing Survivor. You know, everybody's playing Survivor. Everybody's surviving. Even video game developers are surviving. Okay. All right, to continue. I am angry, not at others, I would say. I mean, I could find reasons to be angry at others. The thing is, something didn't make sense to me. And it could be my problem or it could be the species' problem, based on the depth of the situation. So my situation is, I'm like, okay, you know, there's so many stories I could enter and act as a character in. You know, the moment I graduated from Toronto Film School, I understood that literally everybody is in some sense an actor, but they are an actor of their own direction. Do you understand? And in order to build an advanced civilization, we need to have actors capable. That means imagine you're a director and you've made your own films, right, to such a degree where now you're ready to make other people's films. Okay? So similarly, in the human experience, you live in your own reality, in your own inner realms. You direct your own life. But at some point in this life, you're going to feel, is it just under my command? Is existence, is the experience of my, is the subjective experience, the subjective appearance of my objective existence, my inner subjective appearance of my outer objective existential appearance. Pretty much, you open your eyes in the middle of nowhere, consciousness plus the environment plus intelligence systems and patterns in the environment begin allowing you to both, it's as if somebody's sculpting you, but you're also getting up. Imagine Michelangelo, you know, he was known as someone who would just stare at a chunk of rock, and then somebody would be like, Michelangelo, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm working, right? And then in one go he would, like, you know, sculpt it out. But now imagine, and Michelangelo even has this quote where he says, I saw the angel in the stone and I set it free. So imagine in the middle of Michelangelo sculpting the angel like gets out of the rock, stands up, and it's like, yo, you got me out of this, you know. So that's kind of like the poetry of the free will, sculpting, cultivating its own shape, and at the same time the world sculpting the free will. Do you know? Because when it comes to multidimensionalism, we don't know how many beings have interfered in our life. The moment you bring a possibility of non-physical beings, it's as if we don't know how many rooms we're in. We think we're in like 2 rooms, but what if there's like 12 rooms? You know? What if the human being is experiencing, for now, the human idea? I've come to the conclusion that the mind can access 4 positions in reality. It can be void to itself, it can be singular to itself, it can be dual, which we all are in that room, and it can be infinite. You know, in Attack on Titan, there was a scene where Kenny was telling Levi everybody had to be drunk on something. When you look at what's going on with energy, was like bored of just existing, and then it decided to separate. It was bored of collective existence, and then decided to separately exist. Then it has become bored of separate existence. It has decided to subjectively separately exist. And then after it subjectively separately exists, it's going to get bored and it's going to collectively exist, subjectively exist. That means that means there could be a chance that, give it like 200 to 400 years, maybe a bit more. But around that phase, that time, okay, give it around that time, what's going to happen is that human beings, we're going to be like, atheists and secular people are going to go towards cyber spirituality. Okay, why? Because reality is all about the cultivation of ability. Part of cultivating ability is the expansion of the context, the world you're in. You understand what I'm saying? In the future, human beings, materialists are going to get bored of just being an existential entity. They're going to understand that the imagination which they're treating unreal, it's just 3/4 unreal. It's just 1/4 unreal imagination. 3/4 it's real. Okay? And somebody says, Mr. Within, how's imagination 1/4 unreal? Or how are you saying it's real? I'll tell you, because you can see it. Part of something being real is for us to know its outline and its shape and its dimension in space. What the mind is doing is actually creating stuff, but without the density. So what that means is the brain can't literally, let's say you walk by and you see, a Lamborghini, right? And it's not like you can literally imagine a Lamborghini just being appearing out of nowhere and suddenly like the Lamborghini appearing. But you can completely visualize driving that Lamborghini in your mind. What does that mean? That means you can interact with the outline, with the shape of reality multidimensionally, but when it comes to the density of existence, you're in one dimension. I think that explains it pretty well. Viewers can share if they see a flaw in that, view. To be honest, to be human means to be a temporary being that is inspired by eternity. That's what it means. Do you understand? Because if our sense of being temporary wasn't important to us, people wouldn't care about health. Do you understand? There was a time where I was like, why is it that some person suddenly goes and experiences yoga, meditation, non-dualism, they get an ego awakening, but why is it that they suddenly could become unhealthy, or suddenly they don't have a motivation to live in the world or whatnot? And I was like, oh my God, this is the dark side of spirituality. The dark side of spirituality, it's kind of like a being that wasn't grateful for being human, so it became something else. And the reason is because we just appear, we don't have a sense that we work to get here. That's the hilarious thing, right? It's as if we have no memory. We're just like, it's like if they ask the newborn baby, hey, what was your past life like? And the baby started crying, and then they were like, it must have been tough, But the child is maybe crying because it has entered again, and it's remarkable. It's like, every day I go to a coffee shop, and it's like, sometimes I think it's like our eternal beings going to temporary worlds. It's like, I'm going to incarnate as a being just to taste this cappuccino, or as the Italians say, cappuccio, Seriously, guys, I was in Italy and I said cappuccino. The guy looked at me, and then, the person's like cappuccio, and then I'm like, okay, okay. When in Rome, be Roman. When on earth, be human, for the love of God, But what does it mean to be human? It means to honor, you honor your past. You honor your past, you become grateful for the present, you appreciate and become grateful for the present, and you become fascinated with the future. There are three things, really. These are the three things. Because the present is just cool how it's here. Do you understand? The present existing is like an invention on the inventor's table. I wouldn't be surprised if like religious, like let's say Gnostic priests or like ancient monotheistic priests, they were like, yo, why is the world changing? And they were like, God hasn't finished creating the world yet. You know, it could be something like that. Or maybe it has, actually. In the monotheistic tradition, because there's the idea of destiny, it's as if the world's ending is known, its beginning is known. So the purpose of life is not for the entity to get to the beginning, or to get to the ending, right? But the purpose of life is for the being to realize that the journey between the beginning and ending is creating an opportunity for you to experience through the format. I don't know why I want to say the word forma, right? F-O-R-M-A, but I don't think we use that word in English language. But anyways, type of forma. It's as if we're here to be conscious we're here, and to realize that while we're here, this is like the live stream event. This is the real time event. It's incredible. We're like creatures in time, and the internet has given us an opportunity to capture ourselves in time. You know, I've done something in this life where once suddenly it dawned on me, and I was like, yo, even when I'm not talking, people might be hearing me talk because of the internet, which is kind of a cool thing, do you know? So let's go to this. Let me bring the notepad. Let's actually dive into this. Somebody was like, yo man, I'm so tired in this world. Then they heard a voice and they're like, what's that? From the sky. And they're like, yo, are you God? Is that the voice of God? And the voice was like, no, I'm the voice of the world and I'm tired of your attitude. You know, imagine the world is tired of us and we're tired of the world, you know, and in the middle it's just a hilarious divine misunderstanding. In the monotheistic story, right, what Abrahamic tradition, what is the idea? God created man, you know, he imbued him with the spirit from his breath, commanded, in some sense, told him to learn gave him all the celestial names, told man to say all the celestial names, pretty much gave him a cosmic mind, and then told, and then told all the angels, told its own universe of creation to bow down. But there was something where there was in some sense the idea of the rebellion and whatnot, and then in this view that in some sense Adam made a mistake because Eve was a part of Adam in the theological story, so Adam made the mistake. And so what is the idea? The idea is we have come into this world, and there's like this supernatural being trying to deceive us, and then there's this beyond, like, ultra supernatural being that created everything that is guiding us. Do you understand? So it's a collision of inner and outer force. So imagine, so humanity is being tested, and imagine humanity builds the advanced civilization, and eras of the most benevolent and advanced human beings are ushered into the world. And so for the first time, all the religious people were like, yo, we didn't expect suddenly everybody to be like a saint, and imagine the world was ushered into that state because there was so much greater challenges beyond the small problems the species had conceived for itself. You see, sometimes in life you need someone to, in some sense, like as if like what do you call it? It's like grabbing a kitten from the back of its neck, pulling it out from a box, and throwing it into a world that is unfamiliar, because that is the world it is meant for. And so you as a human being have to be very careful that you have not boxed yourself in ideology. This is why I give these talks every day. To pretty much see, have I missed something? Have I not seen something yet? And the hilarious thing is, this world is infinite. So the point of it is not just about seeing, but about seeing sight, which they call self-awareness. When you see something, that's sight. When you see an object or subject, when you see an object, that's outer sight. When you see a subject, that's inner sight. But when you see your own sight, when you become the presence of the moment, not as if you become it, but you stop being what you are not. As the poet Rumi said, your task is not to seek for love, but to get rid of all the barriers you have made against it. And the love he would spoke about was the love of the beloved. This was something that the saints and the Sufis in the Sufi tradition, these were like, how can I tell you, like incredible human beings that had chosen that the ultimate ideal of this universal sector, that means they had chosen what energy would express as them into the world, and they had chosen that expression to be the energy of the grace of the Creator. Do you understand? That means sometimes when I see a chaotic entity, I'm like, oh, is that the wrath of God I'm looking at? Sometimes when I see a kind entity, oh my God, is that the grace of God I'm looking at? And then sometimes I look in the mirror and I'm like, yo, is this the questioning of God I'm looking at? Do you see? Could it be that when man forgets his divine origin, it is for the first time how an eternal being laughs at its own doubt? Do you understand? Imagine the magnitude, the presence of an eternal being. Imagine the elegance, the style of that mind. A mind untouchable, undisturbable. A mind that is from the roots of heaven itself. Do you know what that means? That means just like the tree has roots, right, that go into the soil, imagine from your mind, as if this poetically, like this invisible tree, roots have extended all over the cosmos. And you are rooted in this world, not as just a temporary image, not just as a frame of a truth, when it's an endless film. Mankind is here to be a conscious verb. Because the moment you think you're a noun, tomorrow will open your eyes again. So, let's dive into this. So, I said this episode is a commentary So an entity's entitlement to subjective experience of an objective existence. So question, what is an entity? What does entitlement mean? So guys, right now we are acknowledging the concepts, and then after we're done getting a sense of what the concepts and the sentence structure mean, with the imagery behind it, then we get a sense of in what sort of different context that imagery can be placed. You got to see it this way. Concepts are like points, like random points you draw on a piece of paper, and the context can be a line connecting all of them, or a circle drawn, a shape drawn around all those points. So there could be an experiential, like there's a way we create context by our direct experience of the moment, and then there's a sense of context that comes from just what we consider what we cannot see about the whole thing being. So anyways, what is an entity? What does entitlement mean? What is a subject? What is an experience? What is an object? And what is existence? Jesus, what is existence? You know, just one of those days, you know, casually talking about what existence is. You know, it's like what you do Saturday afternoon. You know, wonder why we're all existing in a moment of experience that. It's as if we're all personally experiencing an impersonal world. And we need each other to figure out what the world is. Do you understand? Just like the blind need somebody to hold their hand. Similarly, the human species, its hand is held, but it is held by the potential of its future. Because you can choose to sponsor, you can choose from which state, from what kind of state and attitude your soul sponsors and becomes sponsored into reality. So when I see a religious person, I know that their free will, is being sponsored by the past. When I see, for example, like a hipster, having, let's say they're going with a skateboard or something, I get a sense like, okay, that entity's outer expressionism is as if they're sponsored from the present culture. That means they're under. See, it's not just about what is new, it's about what the person understands out of this experience. This life, of course, it's a physical journey, but it's a non-physical accumulation of various events and moments that your brain self-simulates itself. And so what's going on is that there has been an unknown witnessing force from the beginning of your life. Every moment you have been in the conscious waking state, in deep sleep, it's like there's nothing there, but in the conscious waking state, there is something that has been watching, that has been witnessing in a very strange, one-sided, unknown way. Do you know, as if we've put on virtual reality goggles and we've forgotten who put them on, right? So similarly, and who put them on could not be a human entity. It could even not be an entity, not be a creature that is. Like energy either lives through shape or it lives through space. When it lives through space, it becomes the force that creates the shape. When it lives through shape, it gives a purpose to space. So what it means is that the temporary is giving the eternal something to do, and the eternal is giving this temporary something to be. So what is an entity? A containment of energy, a self-aware. No, I can't say self-aware. So what is an entity? So let me see, how am I being an entity right now? I'm being an entity because I have a biological body. I'm being an entity because there's my memory, there's my mind, there's my imagination, there's the personality, there's the subjective experience that makes me an entity. So an entity is a shaped, moving intelligence. I mean, what else can I say? It's like, what's an entity? All right, man, it's a shape. It's some shape. Here, shaped intelligence. This is the best way I could say it. I think this is the best. This is, I think, shaped intelligence. But the intelligence may not be conscious. May be conscious or unconscious of itself. So human beings, you might be a human being, you might have even lived, like you might be an 80-year-old man right now and be like, yo, I've lived life, yo, I've seen everything, you know. But in reality, there are some parts of life that you cannot see because it's the one looking. In the Upanishads, they say the seer of the seen is unseen. So what does entitlement mean? Entitlement, see, when we see an entity, like let's say we see, for example, a turtle, right? And we call that entity turtle. And let's say somebody sees a turtle stuck somewhere with some plastic around it. It's like, yo, and the person's like, hey, turtle, why do you have plastic on your neck? And they like, you know, playfully communicate to the animal and take off the plastic. And then they're like, all right, go live your life, you know, young man, young turtle, you know. And then so what it is that when you look at that creature might not be aware that it's a creature, okay? But we are aware that it's a creature. So in order to have the concept, so in order to notice the concept of an entity, to even notice an entity, we need to have a consciousness that can separate itself from its world and the other. Do you understand? So it could be said that when there was no awareness, that means we cannot know our own entire entityhood. I mean, we can now that we're conscious, but before we were conscious, it was as if others knew. We were entities to others, to ourselves. We were just like a first-person experiential force, kind of like a pilot in a plane of existence. Just so, like, imagine someone singing in NASCAR, you know. So what it is the idea of being something is actually something that comes from other minds, right? That means imagine two unconscious creatures. One of them becomes conscious and realizes it's an entity and realizes the other is an entity, but the other doesn't realize it's an entity. So if you ask the one that doesn't realize it's an entity, are you an entity? It'll just stare at you. But if you ask the one that has noticed it's separate from the world, it's an entity. So in order for us to be an entity, we have to be separate from the world. And this is the bizarre thing, because in order for you to be an individual existence, you have to be separate from reality. But in order for you to be enlightened and united with God, you have to be inseparable from reality. Do you understand? So it's as if God made us to be an entity, but the entity doesn't want to be an entity. So this is why I sometimes think, yo, is the most divine act to be a human being? Imagine somebody tells you, yo man, I'm an alien. And you're like, yo, you're an alien? Do you want me to help you get earthly citizenship? Like, and it's, you see, in our minds, you know, I can fathom myself as an angel. I can fathom myself as a demon. I can fathom myself as an extraterrestrial. I can fathom myself as a space being. That means no body, just a sector of space that's conscious of itself. I can fathom myself in various ways, but the cool thing about life is that my body promised me to myself, and my mind promised me to myself, but they are both changing all the time. Do you understand? We are changing. Are we the change, or are we what's changing? So entitlement is ownership. Ownership comes from separatism, from a singular worldhood. So in order to be an entity, in order to own things, in order to have reality, to map yourself in the outer realms, what we do is we storify ourselves, and then the story becomes something where this is really what I think emotional, not just emotional intelligence, but just what street smart people are doing is that they're quickly realizing the type of self they are in the type of world they see, and then realizing the limits of the world they see, and then trying to readjust the world they see to the world that everybody else sees, and then getting introduced to a new sense of reality where neither what you said, what you thought suffices, and neither what others say suffices, and it comes to a point where everybody, it's like a collective thing. It's as if 8 billion keys have to go into like hilariously one door lock at the same time, and we all have to pull turn the key, clockwise at the same time. You understand? That's the thing. This is why the bodhisattvas will increase. Do you know what that means? That means more and more individuals are going to be what it means is that heaven has brought us under its wing. The divine has to teach man now. And as much as I dislike the idea of teachers and students, because I see everybody as an explorer, as either an advanced communicator or a pilot of their attention in this realm. Because I have seen too many cruel teachers. It is so easy to put a box on somebody's head, but it is way harder and way more exciting to get rid of all the boxes in the room. The human species, it's hilarious. Imagine, there were like the most advanced beings, 3 most advanced beings were sitting somewhere, okay? And they were talking to each other, and they're like, yo, we are the 3 mightiest and most advanced beings. We are the 3 musketeers of advancement, on this planet, in this world. What should we do? And then one of the advanced beings says, maybe the first thing we should do is get out of this small box we're in. And imagine they were all sitting in like this giant box for no reason, right? And that's the point. That means you could be the most advanced, you could be the greatest, you could be in the peak of at the epitome of some sort of excellence, but you might be boxed in. You might be boxed in by yourself. You might be boxed in by your others in your past, or you might even be boxed in by the future because they told you that the future is in some sense an upside down smile, but only if we live upside down. It's so difficult, I guess the answer is obvious. I was thinking, if somebody is doing a backflip, right, technically we can say they're smiling and frowning at the same time. In that moment they're spinning in the air, like when they do a 180. But anyways, whatever. Let's keep going with this. So entitlement means that energy has led to attention. Attention sees stuff, and attention makes the objects and subjects around it orbit itself. So your sense of ownership is all the things that are not you that are orbiting in your space. That for example you have had an experience with, right? There was this, I'm someone who, for me, divinity is way more exciting than magic, but back in the day there was something about magic where there was this was in Japanese supernaturalism, metaphysics, I guess, where they had the sense that there wasn't like a heaven or hell, but there was other worlds. There were parallel universes, and in those parallel universes, there were other beings. Right? So for example, I would say in Japanese metaphysical culture, or not just in Japanese, in various ancient cultures, there has been people who they have went somewhere and they've suddenly appeared as if they've teleported in some other part of the world. Do you know? Or there's stories of these guys who go into this mountain and then they sleep for like thousands of years and then they wake up, and it's like, stories like that, of that nature. So what it means is that the world is horizontally transcendental in certain Eastern cultures, but in monotheistic culture, it's vertically transcendental. For example, the idea of past lives and future lives, that's horizontally transcendental. And this vertical transcendental is something I'm terming. It's of my own design. We all are possess some sort of organizational intelligence. And when we distrust ourselves, we do not give ourselves a permission to see how we can actually solve our problems. Sometimes, a problem could be how you're looking at it, which means the problem's in the inner realms. Or the problem could be something that's outside. For example, somebody who has mental illness due to their biological system, something that happened to the biological system. Let's say you're oh, man. All right, guys. I guess I should use my cough as a perfect example. So, for example, I'm coughing right now, it's making me, let's say, feel something. So I ask myself, is the problem from the inner realms or outer realms? And I see that I'm smoking a cigarette, the problem's from the outer realms, Like essentially it's like the problem is due to an outer realm event, right? So I could sit here and be like, yo man, if I change my attitude, and I smoke a cigarette, maybe I won't cough, but the problem is in the outer realms. So unless the problem's solved in the outer realms, it doesn't matter how many inner realm ideas the person has, right? By the way, sorry about these coughs. I sometimes, maybe somebody's like, Anyways, it's the sounds of our world. There was a time where I was like, yo, are these coughs like bothering people? And I'm like, if people actually stand outside and listen, do you know how many noises your ear is hearing that's not caring for? You know how many sounds you hear that you could suddenly make? Like, I have an elevator in my apartment, and I reached a point where I realized this damn elevator is beeping in every floor, right? And it was like a bunch of floors that go up, and every day beep, 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 beep. And the sound of the beep, I don't know who designed the damn apartment. Like it's an incredible place, but who designed the damn elevator alarm, right? The elevator sound. The elevator sounds like the exact beep that you hear in a hospital when somebody's heart is about to stop. So imagine being in an elevator, right? And it's like in the floors that it's going up, right? You're just hearing like beep, 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 beep. But anyways, whatever. Let's continue with this. I'm going to end this off soon. 5 questions. What is a subject? A subject is an inner object that does not have density. That does not have density, but if you act upon your inner realms like an inventor, you can give non-physical subjects objective mass. So that's kind of what I'm doing to some degree. I mean, I'm not turning into an object, but I'm turning something that I'm experiencing behind my eyes into something, into a sort of, into a format in front of my eyes. What is an experience? An experience is really the division between the observed and the observer, or the experienced and the experiencer. And the idea follows that you cannot experience something without an experiencer there. And the experiencer is there, it's there as an unknown presence of your whole moment, but because we human beings got bored, we're like, yo, it's an idea, you know. You know, there's something about human beings or just creatures, I think it's just in the nature of our behavior as evolutionary entities, you know. So, it's another way of saying an experience is an unknown being doing something known. Yeah, there you go. You know, guys, starting this YouTube channel has humbled me. It has humbled me to realize that the values that are needed in this world will find the world. And there are so many events going on. That means it's so fascinating, you know. Being a single human being is like not knowing what 8 billion other human beings are doing. It's incredible. It's like we're in a room and we don't know what the others are doing. Like, it's kind of, you know, it can lead to an immense amount of paranoia and stress, but at the same time, it's like a playful, okay, you know, it's like the species doesn't know what it's doing, but it's stumbling its way to a great future. You know, that's really what it is. We're stumbling right now. Like, we have a sense of what the better is, but we're stumbling to attain. But in order to attain, we have to start from a better position. So there's a saying in Zen where they say to the best way to climb a mountain is to start at the top, which is another way of saying the best way to become enlightened is to see how you are not enlightened, not how you are enlightened. Oh my God, that dude is enlightened. Oh my God, that dude is, you know, that girl is enlightened. At some point, there is no enlightenment like that. That we're just beings here. That means the reality of what a being is surpasses the reality of what a human is. And you are a human being. The being is your presence. Your presence could be timeless, but your personality is a creation of time. So what is an object? This is the most fascinating thing, because there are, I guess we come to a duality here. An object is either an object, an object is an existential, this is very cool, this is why there's an argument for solipsism. An existential object, objective, an objective an existential object can only be subjectively experienced, which is another way of saying we need the experiencer to know that the experience is there, or we need the observer, which is life, the life force we are, the observer, to notice the observed. We need the smoker to have the cough, you see. Joke. Guys, the best time to quit smoking is before you smoke your first cigarettes. It's an honest waste of time. You know, it adds flavor, but it's a waste of time. Waste of time and money. Anyways. So an existential object can only be subjectively experienced, which is another way of saying an object is actually a non-physical experience. And this means the unknown. This means known phenomenology. Oh, good. All right, guys, I gotta take my jacket off. This is one of those talks, you know. All right. So this means simply known objects are just unknown subjects. That's it. Unknown subjects are more real than known objects. Okay, I think I went back to the previous question. Okay, what is existence? I mean, existence is sum of all objects and space. So I guess this would mean that existence equals objects plus space. Human existence equals subjectively intelligent space equating itself as an object to move it. So what this means is we're actually, imagine, this is just a probability, that we're these incredibly advanced forms of intelligence that in some sense can still move form without form. So what I'm saying is, like, imagine space is alive, but it has no shape. So it had to create a place where it could have shape. Because I keep thinking about, what does a location have value? Like just the idea of a location, a place. What does it have value to? Like, who does it have value? God is beyond the physical world, so God doesn't need a location. It seems an entity, man. It seems that the world is subjectively simulated, so man can experience himself as a subjective simulation of that which was never a subject. It's as if this is the bizarre thing. You know, the Buddha didn't think there might, oh my God, maybe the Buddha knew. There is a humanized awakening where the species was still, for the next couple hundred, like for a long time, it's still going to be around. But then there's going to come a dehumanized awakening. This means an entity that started its conscious experience of its journey in the space-time continuum from a moment in time that became its date of birth. It actually it's as if, like, imagine you forget, you're a film director and you go to a new scene and you forget all the scenes you had shot before. But then as you're in the film and you feel like, oh my God, is this my first time being on a film set? But you suddenly feel you've been a director before. You suddenly feel like the cinematic language has been, you know, your inner eyes from the beginning of your life. Not from the beginning of your life, but from the moment that you noticed your life. It could be an eternal being cannot notice itself. And it is only a temporary being that can notice itself. I keep going to this idea of the profoundness of the concept of God, the necessary existent, meaning it was not created, it was uncaused. So uncaused means energy is eternal. And it's like, what an eternal being is alone. They say God alone is. That means God is alone. That means we are not its equal. It is not alone. Imagine, like, do you know, imagine you're 40 years old and then there's, like, you know, someone who's, imagine you're like 60 years old and then there's someone who's 20 years old in front of you. And so it's as if it's like you want to speak to someone who's 60 years maybe. You see what I'm saying? It's as if an eternal being realized eternity means singularity. So this eternal being was like, I cannot experience friends, I cannot experience a family, I cannot experience being part of a species, I cannot experience the endless glow of a legacy. But I can create beings that can. And that is the grace of God. God loves the world so much that it created it. This is true art. True art is when this creative force comes and you realize, if you hold it in, you have denied that which was meant to arrive. You see, it's one of those things. It's strange, you know, sometimes I don't know if these talks are giving me or I'm giving these talks, you know, like it's strange. But we're here now, a species in the void. The eternal legacy of consciousness. This species will go through so many transformations. And we're going to see that humor is going to be a guardian angel of the species, because that's what you do when it's inefficient. You know, we're these creatures that, you know, when it's like, if we can laugh at our mistakes, we may be able to, you know, we might be capable of harboring the ability to smile at our victories, you know. For me, it was very strange, because the consideration of, like, when a person thinks of the idea of advancement, The world has brought us here, for the longest time, I didn't know why. And sometimes it doesn't have a reason, it's just something that's happening. But we have the capacity for reason. And it's another way of saying, like, if you're stranded on an island, it's a logical thing. It's common sense to try to use whatever tools or everything that is around you. So I just see it that it's as if we are 8 billion creatures stranded on a galactic island. Instead of an ocean, what is there? There is an unknown cosmic void. And so it's as if that's the great oceans that we must cross. It's like some people say, what is the sky? The sky is the next ocean we must cross. The skies of humanity are the next oceans of mankind, the next oceans of a creature. And there is a beautiful feeling. I don't know, I thought like, am I in this world to equip myself? Do I have to be like Iron Man, create the most incredible Iron Man suit, go live in it and just be this archetype? And then I realized I am not satisfied. I am not satisfied with trying to be, like, how would I say, this was what I realized recently, that I'm tired of acting. When I say not acting in the outer realms, I'm saying I'm not like an actor, like a film actor. When I say I'm tired of acting, is I realize that I have been. So look at what happens. A child is born. What the day is a sequence of events. In all those sequence of events that are experiences, the human being has a sort of archetypal self. So the inner life is like what is happening to your idea. If somebody comes and says something rude to you, your inner life can change in that moment. If somebody says nice to you, it becomes a weird world when everybody tries to be the same thing. This is why I realize advancement is a quality. We dress ourselves up in the potentials of the day in our inner realms. And so I guess what I'm trying to get to is, dear human being, dear member of the species, you may feel the world doesn't see you, and you may feel that you may not even see the world completely. But the point is that everybody has been given and has been equipped with some sort of force. And this thing about, there was a time where I suddenly realized this thing they would say about smart and stupid people, I'll tell you this so years ago, this is before the Mr.Within talks. Long story short, there was a place in downtown Toronto, like this lounge you could smoke in. Anyways, a friend of mine takes me there. He's invited his other friends there. When we're going there, he tells me one of his friends was a bit slow. He tells me this beforehand, right? And, I didn't care. We go there. And when we went there, I remember I was very just, relatively quiet guy. And I was there, and what was happening was that, my friend was, he felt he had a very high IQ. And then we go and see, and I realize what he's calling slow, right, is just a person without passion. Do Do you understand? We're calling a lot of passionateless people stupid. You know, but they haven't found passion, because every being, your DNA, it can activate it. Like think of it this way. It's like you are some type of being. You have some type of DNA nobody else has, meaning that you can do something that nobody else can. But the challenge is we have to find the proper context of our own value. For example, for me, I could have been like other YouTubers, just talking about a trend and trying to make this big or whatnot, right? But from the beginning, it was just something where it was more like I was living as I was doing these talks as an artist, like it was more like an art form rather than like something specific, right? But then at the same time, I realized if I go and promote my YouTube channel, I will never know who would have come to it without the promotion, without the context giving. Do you understand? And so that's the advantage. Like, I don't have millions of subscribers right now in all these years, but I've gotten to see what, at least like some beings like are have commonalities of vision as me, it seems. So anyways, what I'm trying to say is it's the type of being you are that ends up being our greatest strategy to how every person is going to enter the unknown at some point. So the type of being you are, if you are weak-willed, others will come and tell you. Pretty much the idea is you move your world or the world moves you. This is something I didn't understand as a shy kid, and I was like, holy shit, why don't I feel like myself? Because the world was moving me, I wasn't moving myself. And you can't move yourself until you experience a moment where you realize you have to literally solve all the problems of your lifetime yourself. All of them. That means everything. That means if somebody puts a car and like a mysterious engine in front of you, that this is what relying on your own power means. You have to be like, okay, if I was stranded on an island, how would I solve the problem? How would I do it like this? If I was, this is why I think, the weird circumstances of human history have made a lot of people right now, be alone. Why? Because the world is giving you a chance to become acquainted with your own power. So rather than being a copy paste of another human being, another human archetype, you get to be a human being that has never existed before. That's the value of you. That means when it comes to the uniqueness of every individual's DNA, everybody is technically a celebrity. Do you know? Every child being born into this world is a being we have never seen before, a new upcomer in the world. Sometimes I thought I was thinking about hip hop culture, and I thought about a doctor, I forget the technical term, that helps with the birthing process and brings the child into life, right, into the world, right? So I was thinking that it's like, imagine that doctor was someone who loved hip hop, right, and was like, yo, how many of these kids I'm bringing into the world are going to be rappers? Do you know what I mean? And some doctor brought the greatest rappers, the greatest athletes, the greatest inventors. It was human hands. You understand? It's human beings are literally passing the torch, but the torch is other human beings. Doctors probably feel like, Olympians, but on an evolutionary level of yo, get to it. All right, next soldier, next troop, next crew of Spaceship Earth. And really the beautiful thing is, so an entity's entitlement to a subjective experience. That means you actually don't own your body. You own the idea of your body that is in your that is arising. So what it is this strange situation where, for example, if you would see an atheist and theist debate, like you see these atheist-theist debates, right? The atheist is like, yo, you believing in a fictional man in the sky? You believing in an invisible God that just likes to do this and likes to do that, right? The atheist says God doesn't exist. How can you believe in God? But the idea of ourself is as invisible as the idea of God. Your sense of self, when I say invisible, I mean in the inner realms, like it's like you can see your idea of yourself, like who you were yesterday. But what I'm saying is the idea of God is literally a universal metaphor for consciousness. Consciousness is an invisible awareness mediating what's in it, right? So you are like this invisible, unknown, witnessing force through your eyes, looking at, being aware of the whole moment. And what is God? God is watching its creation. God is watching its free will. Just like the human being writes a novel, and then, like, I don't know if anybody's done this, like as a writer, I've appreciated this. Sometimes I write things, and then, you know, I read them, like, I don't know, after a couple months or a long time passes, and then I read them again. I sit down and I read, like, how my mind was like perceiving the world then. To be honest, most human beings just want to be acknowledged, to have a value. What it means is we just want to fulfill a role. When you look at it, human beings, you know, everybody at their work, they're trying to go to a higher level of an archetype. They're trying to fulfill a bigger role. But your role is based on the value you generate, right? This is why knowledge was like praised. Why? Because in some sense, when you knew more, when a situation would happen, more ideas would enter your mind. So a sign of somebody who doesn't have imagination is somebody who hasn't actually solved a lot of problems on their own. That's really what the sign of the absence of imagination is. If you think you're not a creative person, it's because you have forgotten that there's a way that we're in this world that literally I can try to talk about it, but nobody will ever see how I am seeing my own being in this moment. I have a private relationship with this world. I have a private relationship with an inconceivable point of this world. That private relationship renders me into an attitude of fear, and in that fear, it's as if all my ignorance and flaws in the act of prayer evaporate. My vision is somehow to get, you know, the advanced humanity a focus point. Right now, the species, if you ask most people, like, yo, what do you think's gonna happen in the future? And they're gonna be like, yo, 99.9% of species go extinct. And, you know, I don't care. Nobody cares. Everybody's cruel. You know, I actually realize I hate the world because the world hates me. Da-da-da-da-da. And we go living our lives in these inner realm simulations, not realizing the world is waiting for us. The hungry people on the planet are waiting for us. All those people who are suffering, they're waiting for us. And suffering is not just outer, it could be very inner. So my recommendation to just beings entering this system, this planet, conscious beings, I don't care if you're human being, interdimensional being, extraterrestrial being, technological being, whatever kind of intelligence you are, you enter this world. The value of our existence, which is energy, is its potential. So we are potential energy. The mind is how the soul is an awareness to the potential of itself. The soul is the potential. Because it comes from God, God is an ultimate freedom. So the way our imaginations actually move, or the ability we have imagination, it is also something which has to do with your... Oh, Jesus Christ. You know, the species has to choose if it wants to be a planetary being, if it wants to be a cultural being, if it wants to be a nationalistic being, entity, if it wants to be a cultural entity, a nationalistic entity, or if it wants to be a global entity, a planetary entity, or if it wants to be a galactic entity, or if it wants to be a universal entity. Those beings that become a universal entity, they actually become very selfless. Saints are not people, they are the world. If you're someone who has experienced gnosis, that means you have experienced the world being you. And it's an honor. The world doesn't show itself to everyone. Why do you think that in religions, in monotheistic religions, they say that man's heart is sealed? You know, somebody may see something, right? But if you're a multidimensional being, there could be different levels of sight. You know, and there's been situations where my intellectual sight, my mind sight has been like, yo, do this and you're going to feel better and it's a good strategy and you're going to feel like a winner. And then my heart has been like, hold on for a moment and look at the situation again. And when I've looked at the situation, then I've realized, yo, is a short-term victory worth it or the long-term victory of everybody? And that's it. Whether we know it or not, we're all living for the advanced civilizations to come. We just have to consciously acknowledge it. Anyways, guys, you know, and all those entitlements of being a cultural entity, national, global, galactic, solar system, galactic, what do you call it? Universal. Pretty much what I'm saying is, think of it this way, our consciousness is being responsible for a small part of the world. And imagine there are conscious beings that are responsible for very bigger parts of the world. You look at, for example, a bee and an ant. These small creatures, very fascinating. You know, to me, sometimes I think there's an invisible collective being. You know, or the queen has a scent or something. There's some collective administration, but it's coming from outside of the bees. It could even be electromagnetic, I don't know. But anyways, you look at an insect and you look at an ant, like I don't know if anybody's ever seen ants carry a sugar cube. I've seen that shit. It's so next level. The ant is like Hercules, right? So I've seen an ant carry a sugar cube. And when you see that creature, you see that entity is just responsible for that game of life. It's like that level of game of life it's playing. Okay, it doesn't know the human being, like there's human politicians giving speeches on podiums, right? It just sees sugar cube and it's taking the sugar cube to its anthill. So to be a basic entity, you have to I guess it's essential to have a sense of being somewhere, and then having a sense of abiding by where you are. You know, a sort of ancient wisdom is that to try to keep something absolute throughout the day. For example, religious people keep God as absolute, right? For me, there was a time where I realized God is inconceivable. So if every day I try to conceive it, I'm actually acting against my own faith. So to me right now, prayer is something when I am called towards, I go and towards it. It's not per se just a robotic action. It's like a communication, but you're listening to the presence, to the inconceivable presence of the authority of reality. Now, when it comes to the authority of souls, kindness is the greatest authority, even though in the outer realms it may not appear so. So what this means is that if, let's say we have two, person A and person B. And person A chooses to cultivate benevolence throughout the lifetime. And let's say person B chooses to cultivate wrath. Now, the person B who has chosen to cultivate wrath or evil, let's just say wrath, experiences of wrath, may feel like a powerful being in the outer realms. But when after it leaves, like you have your body for 100 years, if you're egotistically evil, that's a strategy for 100-year enjoyment. So let's say you're an evil person up to your 20s, and then by your 20s you have incredible power, and then you live like 60 years, you control like the world in an evil way, and you've been like this powerful evil person. And then when you're old, it's like, let's say for example, once you go beyond the sensory veil, once it comes time to leave, you're going to feel extremely powerless, because in the place where you had to notice a power beyond yourself, you became obsessed with your own power, so you missed out on the point. Do you understand? Because if the point of this world was for us to be gods, there would be no point for anybody else to be here. There would be no point for anything to be here. If you notice, to be a god is an inconceivable being. So if we want it to be an inconceivable being, it's not something you can be. That means it transitions, it goes beyond even how the idea of yourself is trying to conceive what you are. So anyways, to end this off, okay. So guys, to finish this talk, to reach a conclusion, and then somebody asked the question in the chat section, I'll share my views. And even though, it's, 2 p.m. on a Saturday, I'm gonna burn the midnight oil. It's like technically I've been burning the midnight oil and taking, breaks, taking small naps in between, naps that extend 8 hours, but it's small in contrast to how long we're awake. To me it was fascinating that if one day I don't sleep, it's as if I have been more awake than sleep in this lifetime, but maybe like if it goes constant. But anyways, whatever. So, an entity's entitlement to subjective experience of an objective existence. The poet Rumi says, before death takes away all that is given, give away all there is to give. That sentence implies that death is a shower of possessions. That means when a being dies, they become freed from all that possesses them and all that they possess. The redemption factor for this is that you become acquainted at some point here's the idea, okay? Socrates said after this life he would either go to a place where there's no Socrates or to a place where all the questions he's had in life will be answered. So this implies that the afterlife is like a 50-50 chance of being nothing at all or being in eternity. If it is an eternity, it could be that the human experience is experiencing itself like a cocoon. What we think is death, it's as if death has never existed, and it's as if from the womb, children in the womb, they have come into the womb of the earth, and from the womb of earth they will go to the womb of heaven, and from the womb of heaven, I'm just saying this poetic thing of simulations after simulation after simulation, but all these simulations are being attracted by a transcendental truth that doesn't seem to be in the room. Different scholars have caught on to this. For example, Terence McKenna talked about the transcendental object at the end of time, and how there was this force of novelty that is pulling reality towards from simpler states to more complexity, but the complexity ends up being reorganized through a novel reset, and therefore new types of simplicity emerge. So where I'm going with this is that we are empty-handed because we are a non-physical being. And the way I've tried to share this with the human audience, and not just me, various mystics and sages and yogis, they have said to become acquainted with your unknown presence before your known personality fades, which is another way of saying, as the Sufi tradition would say, to die before you die, which means you realize life is beyond death. I thought like 4.5 billion years just for the creature to be conscious of the experience of the pain of dying. Like, what's the point? We could have just been unconscious and not known. In the future, imagine like there's advanced technology and genetics, and people can just choose to like never be afraid, or choose to never have sadness, or choose to have never sorrow. And what's bizarre? Because when the human being had less consciousness, the organizational plan for it was way more naturally accurate, but humanity has become the director of his own life, and because he's a director of his own life, he's also tasked with being responsible with abiding by the collective life. So this means that you separated from an unconscious collective system that was just happening in a way it knew how to happen. You have become a separated conscious system now, and this separated conscious system can choose to remain a separate conscious system, or it can choose to consciously experience that collective system, which I feel that's the point. We're not here to just be entities. The entities are like the paint on the canvas, but the point is the painting. The advancement of every moment of being as an absolute presence. Because if we do not consider an absolute presence to a context to the world, there is no world. That means the foundation of reality has to be an inconceivable singularity, or we cannot understand our duality. Anyways, guys, that's it for this talk. To the chat section, somebody asked a very interesting question. It's a question I've had various views on. Somebody in the chat section says, Mr. Within, do you feel you are a carry-on from your last reincarnation of a mystic? So, this is so strange to answer, because my answer for this question every year of my life has changed. Okay? But there has been certain clues that I've got, that certain moments where it's been so familiar to me, where I'm like, okay, you know, it's like trying to be a detective of your own soul, right? And then trying to see what familiarities there are. And this is my hunch. I'll just say this is my opinion so far. I don't feel I was a physical being. I was a creature. I feel that I am actually a being that is still space. So I feel I'm space. This might sound bizarre to people, you know. But because I have been space, I feel I have experienced through multiple beings at the same time their lifetimes. So there has been times where I have felt I'm not like a single soul living a single lifetime. I'm this unconditional presence of space that is based on either its own authority, which is technically inconceivable, so it's not its own. But pretty much what I'm saying is I feel I'm this non-physical space, and the last time that I was, not the last time, but I have a hunch that I was one of the viewers. I feel I was Rishi Vyasa, but I don't feel I was him. I feel I was experiencing through him. I was as if I was one of the commands of his soul at the time. But this is not me being a being, because memory is different when you are not physical. Okay? That was the hunch I got, right? But then let me tell you what changed. You're asking me if I am carrying on something from my last reincarnation. Now let me tell you something else. It occurred to me, what if I am not from the past? What if I am carrying on a future incarnation? What if we reach a certain point where consciousness discovers its timeless birthright? I'll tell you something cool, okay? Just to be kind of like Maximus in the Gladiator, you know, are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? This is a bit egoic, but I'll tell you. There was a time where I felt a group of time travelers in the year 2547 are actually tasked with managing my inner realms. I had a vision of this, right? I had a feeling that as if it's like my whole life, I'm like, yo, I feel angels around me. It's like, yo, they're all like, yo, man, we're not angels, we're you, you know, but we're not this you. And so I will tell you, even if I tell you in my past life I was this, I was that, I am the tip of the iceberg. That means anything I think of a past life to this physical incarnation of mine, it's the tip of the iceberg. You're asking one leaf on a tree with multiple leaves, if in some sense, if it's carrying on the work of its past life. Let me tell you this, God's will is the work of everybody's past life. Because before life, what was there? In our past life, we were not beings, even poetically. But anyways, guys, these are just ideas. I'm not, there was, let me tell you, the reason I say I felt Rishi Vyasa, because in one of these events, I was sharing a story of him, and I'm this Persian guy, okay, who was raised in Canada. For me to somehow find Rishi Vyasa, to even learn about him and know his stories, was such a something. I don't know how that came about, but it was like the synchronicities had something planned. And so, while sharing one of the stories of Rishi Vyasa, I just got this sense that, you see, some beings are like not physical. They are like commandments of the universe. They're what I'm trying to tell you is that think of it this way, that there is a life that starts from the beginning of this life. You have a sense of self that is your human life. So the moment you were born until the moment of you die who you think you are, and all that, all based on that information. Then in mystical thought, there's an idea of a universal self. Now, sometimes when I give these talks, I actually have a familiarity with my universal self. So I actually give these talks as the whole moment. And people are going to be like, what do you mean, Mr.Within? That means you're not giving the talks? Technically, no. The whole moment is happening. And the viewers are thinking I'm giving a talk, but it's a moment happening. So what I'm trying to tell you is that it's like if one leaf on a tree wants to figure out its past life, and that can help it, sure. But it's more interesting than discovering your past life is discovering the trunk of the branch of the tree, which is the poetry of the future life. And then in some sense, you know what it is? This might sound bizarre, but I have this strange, I don't know why I have this feeling, I have this strange certainty that what may happen in the future is, what will happen in the future is that human species will reach a timeless state of mind. When it reaches a timeless state of mind, it can play with time. So my future self, if it has come to the past to work, most likely it's young. It's a child. That means the guardian angels, which I'm saying I think are my future selves, they're from a future humanity where timelessness is child's play. So the noobs of higher dimensions are being the ascended masters of this dimension, But when they realize they're the noobs of their own dimension, then in some sense it becomes a different build towards being OP, Somebody says, Mr.Within, do you think so-called death could be misunderstood meta in reference to life beyond death? Meta equals from Greek. Meta means, the way I remember meta, the word, it means like after. So when they say metaphysics, it's as if somebody saw the physics and they're like, what else? And then the metaphysics became interesting, but so when you say life beyond death, if life is beyond death, there's no such thing as death. That means the idea of death is just, it's like an error. It's a glitch. It's just this, this symbol. Not a symbol, but it's just like a door. Because to me, it something blew my mind. I gave a talk on this, right? That I realized, everybody is going to the unknown. Everybody's going to die. And I was like, should I freak out? Like, it feels like I should freak out. We're all in a world where everybody's going to end at some point, right? Like, there's an ending here, right? And I was like, should I freak out? Then I realized, what am I freaking out for? That's the whole point of it. That means when I remember when I was young, when my parents would take me to an arcade, right? I would love to go on those games and play. Like, I couldn't wait to go open those doors and go in. And I was like, yo, what's the bizarre thing? Why am I afraid of death? Right? I asked myself, I'm like, it seems to be where the road is going, right? So it's like, how can you be afraid of a road? You know, it's just, you just have to go and see where the road leads, right? But I was like, wait a minute, there is something else. And this is why, I've had moments where my mind has tried to convince itself to use a bridge the wrong way, but those moments have been bypassed by just the fascination and the wonder and the curiosity of what will happen in the future before I exit. Do you understand? Like, I don't know who I will be in a couple years. Do you know? I don't know where I will be in a couple years. I might not even be in this realm. Do you know? Or I might be. You know? But whatever it is, I'm just trying to say, dear humanity, whatever game you're in, you're also a being here, okay? And the mystery of why we're being can surpass the limitations of what we do. And our beliefs sometimes come from our limitations of what we can do. Somebody can sit down for a couple hours and just close their eyes and experience a stillness like a pond that is settled, and completely experience their inner realms without any distraction and be completely energized by it. You can let the ripples of your mind settle and become energized, or you can just, you know, do something else. Awareness is it's an important choice. Because the purpose of evolution was to make the creature responsible for its world. Mother Earth is teaching discipline through natural selection, adaptation, and evolution, you know? And you know, I found it very poetic, right? Like, for example, imagine like a child of divorce, right? The child spends some time with the mother, some time with the father, to, let's say, get access to both archetypes. It's remarkable. Every day, I don't know if there's new eyes or there's a new world, but it's cool that there's something happening. You know, you could be in the deepest moment of anguish, of any sort of anguish, and at some point you're like, yo, I'm here though. Something's happening. And even if I am wrong, at least we get to see what I was, right? So this life is kind of like you perform, and you honestly perform, and then you can get to see what the result of your honest performance was. That means it's like old souls use this world, you know, as feedback. Young souls use this world to, like, you know, freak out unnecessarily. It's just transcendental feedback. Because what is giving this talk? Like, what am I? Like, where are these words coming from? They're coming from vision. Something sees something and it can't stand still. That's it. It's an appreciation. Life is an appreciation. I have this strange, like right now it's so clear to me that I think anybody who appreciates their moment of being will end up becoming the healthiest being automatically. Appreciating the presence of your being. Do you know, I was driving in the highway and I was looking at everybody in the cars, right? In their cars just driving, and for a moment I felt like I was seeing God. For a moment I was like, look at all these individual systems moving together, and the world that has been created is giving them that structure. You see, destiny could mean that God already did everything and it's just sitting back and watching, enjoying the show. Or it could be that God is still programming everything on live stream, you know? So what I'm saying is that there is a self that is human, there is a self that is your universal self, and then there is a self that has never been born and that has never died. But then technically it's not a self. So this is why I'm saying, you know, I'm being space. Because that's how the matter notices itself. We non-physically are being physical, and we don't believe in the outer realms there's non-physical stuff. Anyways, guys, thank you for listening. I hope this episode was interesting. Share, subscribe, comment, like, join, you know, support the channel. I'm trying to work on some new projects, create new things. And as always, an advanced civilization is the birthright, is the future's birthright. Rise, mankind, rise.